Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another interview here on Play on GA. For this interview, I am joined by former Offaly footballer and director of mock media, Pádraic Sullivan, a man from Rhode in Offaly. Pádraic, how are you feeling about Offaly football, first of all, and how are you feeling today?
Good to be joining you on the show, Seamus. Offaly football is, I suppose, in a little bit of an unsure state. With the under 20s won an All Ireland final a couple of years ago, it would have given us a huge sort of thirst for what could happen next. And a bit throughout the National League last year, we kind of like we're at a point where we may have stayed up, and that would have been a massive achievement. I remember going into the game against Meath and Tullamore, and there were a couple of points up. Meath, I couldn't believe how bad Meath were, and Offaly had played decent enough. I was so shocked by how bad Meath were, and then they kicked in a Hail Mary ball, the last kick of the game, and they got a draw. And then it was at the Cork game, and Offaly completely dominated the game. Again, making Cork look average, because I suppose the last 10 years or more, we would have seen a Cork team as a big team compared to us. And then like that Cork they just Offaly ended badly. I don't know, they always seemed like they could see it out, and then something would unravel, something crazy like a back pass to the goalie or a stupid foul, or silly things that, if you're confident in your game and players are kind of believing in where they are, they don't make that mistake. So I suppose John Mahon's gone now, which probably his time was up. Let's call a spade, and there's a new manager in. There's a group of players that won 20s All Irelands a couple of years ago. They're probably not there yet in terms of the development. Sometimes in weaker counties they springboard up and they get chances that they wouldn't in the bigger counties. But they need time. They need to be playing Sigerson and I suppose being on training panels for a couple of years to be physically prepared, because it's a tough game at the top, and you need to be incredibly conditioned and physically in shape to do so. So look, it's Division 3, new manager. Hopefully the 20s. They'll probably stop being called the 20s now. They'll just be the senior players. They'll get more game time, more time in that environment, and it would be definitely a goal to go up again. Like that has to be the goal.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think with the talent coming through and then obviously a new manager coming in, there has to be that goal of, right, we're going back up to where we belong, Division 2. Because I do think Offaly, they were, as you mentioned, they were mixing it right there with Meath and Cork. I think Meath and Cork were both absolute carnage last year. Obviously, Meath, Andy McEntee, at the beginning of the season, hung on to his job by the skin of his teeth. I mean, it was 51-49 in favour of him staying. It was that razor tight. Cork as well. Obviously, Keith Ricken left halfway through the year, obviously for personal reasons. Cork are in a similar place to yourselves, about that they had an under-20 All-Ireland winning team. They have a lot of talented players that are coming through. But we were talking for a bit off there. Do you think that extra year, because obviously it used to be the under-21s, do you think that kicking it back to under-20 means that players aren't almost physically ready yet for the senior game? And when they're stars of the under-20 game, they come in and they're almost in for a bit of special attention. I mean, the likes of Kieran Archer that we've seen over the years that have torn it up at the under-20 level, and then we haven't heard from them really at the senior level.
Yeah, it's very rare you get a player these days that comes on the scene at 18 or 19 and straight away is able to hold his own. Probably Michael Murphy,
David Clifford, probably.
David Clifford, not many more. They're once every 6-7 year sort of players, that will just slot in seamlessly, and they don't need any transition period at all. But like your rank and file player, your player that comes on the scene at 22, 23, 24, sees what it's like to be in that environment, understands the demands of the game, what they need to do on and off the field, and I think that progression through that system gives players the total respect that that job demands, like in terms of organizing themselves both on and off the field, understanding rest and recovery, understanding, how to mind themselves properly. And then it comes to a point where they've probably a little bit pissed off they didn't get a bit more game time, and then they get meaner with everything that they do. Like they're more strict on themselves, and that's how you kind of like go through that system. But it's definitely only your special stars that just hit the ground running and don't look back.
Mm-hmm. No, without doubt. I mean, I think Jack Bryan, Cormac Egan, they're going to be the faces of Offaly football now over the next 10 years if they stay on the right path. Because obviously you've had the likes of Keane Johnson that looked like the future there with Offaly, and obviously he's gone elsewhere. I think if Offaly have their 6 best forwards on the pitch, I think it's an incredible forward line. I mean, last year, Keane Farrell wasn't around. He's someone that I rate very, very highly. I think he was the key full forward there in 2020, wasn't there in 2021. But yeah, I agree completely that, look, Offaly, that the ceiling was shown against Westmeath. They were swept aside in the semi-final at, coming towards the end. Westmeath were just a bit better on the day. I think Jack Cooney is a very shrewd manager, though, and I think he managed to really get the best out of that side. And then obviously going on to beat Cavan in the final. But just as I was doing my research, obviously, for this interview, I noticed probably one of the funniest stories I've seen, but not completely accurate. Of course, this involves you preventing a woman from getting her car clamped in Dublin and then getting a date, apparently, for your efforts. But what the hell happened there?
I think we're coming on nearly 8 years in that story. I think that was 2015. I'm nearly sure, but we were playing a match with the Defence Forces and against the Guards, and I was a little bit early for the game, so it was in the Phoenix Park. So I went and got a sandwich and a cup of tea, and I was reading the paper in my car, and I was just parked outside the criminal courts there, and sitting there reading the paper, kind of like looking at the phone every now and again and see what time I was at. And next thing, a Dublin City Council van pulled up behind me, and they got out and they went and looked at the car in front of me, and then they come back to the car, and I was, you're killing time, you're kind of you're looking at everything, and I saw them going back and getting a clamp, and I looked in the console in the middle of my car where you keep the change, and I did loads of change. So I just wound down the window. I said, "Are you going to put a clamp in that car?" And they're like, "Yeah, there's no ticket on it, or the ticket's expired." And I said, "If I pay the thing, will you not clamp it?" And they were like, "Yeah, okay." So I said, "Just give us 1 second." So I went and bought the maximum ticket that you could pay for. I think it was like £6. Mm-hmm. So they pulled off. They left anyway, and I left a little note just saying, "I saved your ass from the clampers. You owe me a drink." And I drew a little kind of emoji with a smiley face and put my number. Yeah. So that was grand. Played the match, and when I come back out after the match, my phone had blown up, like it was all over Twitter. It was the next morning. I was driving to work, and someone sent me a video of they were watching Morning Ireland at home.
Oh my God!
And next thing, they had my picture up from Twitter, and there's like, "Do you know this guy?" And I think your man's name is Alan Hughes. That's the presenter's name.
Yeah.
And then he started to proceed to tell the whole story about what happened live on the telly. So that was grand. I got into work around 9:10, and like 9:30, 20 to 10, Midlands Radio 3 calls me, and then in the afternoon I was on Ray Darcy. So the whole thing absolutely went crazy. If you actually Google it, like there's news articles from websites and newspapers in America on it. I don't know how it went like that. Do you know, like things like this can just pop off and they kind of get a life of their own. But one of the papers, I think it was the Mirror, had suggestively wrote that we were going on a date. This woman was actually a barrister in the criminal courts and was in court, and the court had the session had extended more than she thought, and she came out, and the ticket was in the car. But she texted me later on that evening. But she, the papers failed to mention that she had 2 baby seats in the back of the car and she was married with 2 kids. So that's just, I suppose, that's just journalism.
Yeah, no, that didn't get the clickbaits if it didn't lead to something.
Yeah, well, look, you can see how more of a sensational story like that.
It's only got worse. It's only got worse. The clickbaity headlines, like, sure, Messi. There was one about Messi.
I love your line of your line of question before we started about is that the girl you're still going out with now?
No, that
So
was all fair.
no, that's
I didn't say that on this, but
my girlfriend will be watching this now. I'll
yeah.
be getting loads of inquiries about this.
But no, you're right about the journalism and things like that. Like, I mean, obviously she was with someone else with two baby seats in the back of the car, but I mean, that doesn't suit the whole clickbaity thing. I mean, but to
No,
go
and
on Ray Darcy and all, he must have been thinking, what is
I
going on?
subsequently went on and did a degree in journalism after that, so I understand
You
the
understand the
mechanics
hustle
behind
now.
it.
Understand the hustle. But yeah, no. So obviously, then you mentioned that you were playing with the Defence Forces. Like, what's that like? Obviously, you joined the Defence Forces. At what stage in your career did you actually do that? And then how did you balance that? Obviously, you were playing for Offaly and you were playing for Rhode. Like, how does that all fit in together?
Well, I joined the army in 2005. I was only 18, and I joined up in Dundalk, and I was doing my training, and Rhode got to the county final. We actually got to our 2003, 4. We got to our third county final in a row. I first played Rhode in 2003. We had Clara bet us in the final. I was only 17, and then the next year we won the championship for the first time in 6 years. So Rhode ended up doing it 3 in a row. They won it 4, 5, and 6, and we got to our first Leinster final in 2006 against Moorfield. But in 2005, I was doing my army training, and they actually only there for the Tullamore game. I remember getting out of a Thursday night, and then I had to go back that night in the group championships, and then for the county final, they let me out on the Saturday morning, and then we won the final, and we we're all back in the court hotel, and everyone was drinking, and the club had organised for someone to bring me back up, like, and all the kind of older lads in the team were like, "Go on, have a drink, it's grand, you'll be grand," and I was just like, "I'm going back to army training, like I can't be drinking." So I ended up going back that night, not after having one drink after winning the championship. Like, I was just like, how
Yeah.
has this happened? But yeah, I was based in Dundalk for 4 years, and it was quite difficult. I was driving up and down to play with Rhode and to play with Offaly. And then in February 2009, I got transferred to Mullingar. I requested to go in. You kind of have to do your stint in a barracks for a while. They're not just going to train you and
Yeah.
then let you go, having not like got any use out of you. So I went to Mullingar in 2009, and everything was grand. I was getting ready for the National League with Offaly, and then I was only in Mullingar a couple of weeks, and then I took overseas to Africa, which didn't really wasn't great now, but yeah, it was grand. As time went on, then I got into different positions, and I kind of got a more structured, settled role.
Yeah.
So, and then as I said there earlier, 2015, I went and did a degree in journalism media, and they transferred me over to public relations branch. So I was writing articles for their magazine, and then I went in as a videographer in their video section. So look, my job is very well. I'm obviously at the tail end of my career now. I still hope to play for a couple more seasons, but my job is sort of desk orientated. Like, I go to jobs, and then I record content, and I come home and edit it. So I can kind of like come and go as I please, depending on the job demands. But generally, it's fine for what I do now.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously you mentioned about the start of your career with Rhode and with Offaly, like particularly with Rhode, you were with the golden crop there. Obviously the McNamee brothers and, yourself, Anton Sullivan, these guys and the Keelans as well, Pascal Keelan in that side. You went on to have, I mean, a string of Offaly titles. I mean, you are now the most successful club in Offaly, 31 titles. Where did that mentality come in? Was it a mentality thing in the club, or was it just a really special group, or was it a bit of both?
I think Rhode were on top. Or Rhode had been like one of the top teams, kind of like all through from the 20s, 30s, 40s. They had this unique thing of winning a championship in every decade, actually, until they came to their barren time from 1975 to 98. It was 23 years where they didn't do a championship. There's a lot of guys in Rhode with all Ireland medals, my uncle included, Seamus and Stephen Darby, Charlie Conroy, Paddy McCormack. There's like immense history in Rhode Club, and I think the real start of that golden era was we won the Féile in 1998 up in Donegal, and that team went and won the under 14 championship then, and then won under 16 and minors. And we came. There was 4 of us on the senior team in 2003 when Clara beat us by 2 points. 4 starters who were minor, and then you had Alan McNamee, who was 21, and Shane Sullivan, my brother, who was 20, and you kind of had this injection of youth that came into the team then to a decent side. And then obviously went on and won in 4, 5, and 6 then, and got to a Leinster final. And you're saying, like, this is a serious team, like, you know. But I think the nucleus of the team, the McNamees, the Darbys, the Sullivans, and as you said, Pádraic Sullivan and Roy Malone, all these sort of guys, they demanded this standard of excellence. And no matter if a new manager came in, or if there was a change in the guard or new players coming in, whoever came in adhered to that standard, and we didn't drop below that standard. And we went for 4 in a row in 2007, and we lost in the semi-final. But then we bounced back straight away then again and won the championship in 8 and got to a Leinster final again. I think there's just this barrier in the Leinster final. But then again, 2009 lost the championship final to Clara. 2010 won the championship, got to a Leinster final. So then 11 we lost, 12 we won the championship again, and we still knew we weren't we still knew we were thereabouts for Leinster title. 2014 I was captain then myself, we won the championship, got to the Leinster final again, but we come up against St. Vincent's.
Yeah, that was a damn good Vincent's team as well. That was Dermot.
Yeah, we played Vincent's in Navan in the Leinster final, and I remember the first 6 or 7 minutes of the game going, what is the pace of this? Like, it was just like, you're just completely smothered all the time. Every decision that you're making, you know, you've so little time. There's pressure in every kick out. They just smother you from every single place. Like, and then I tore my cruise shift in 2015 for the second time. I was captain again of Rhode, and then came back then in 2016 and we won the championship, and we got to the Leinster final again against Vincent's. And I was just like, can we ever catch a break in one of these finals? Like, we just, the four out of 5 times we played Leinster finals, 4 of them were Dublin sides, and like Vincent's, who are like just amazing, and then Kilmacud Crokes as well, like, you know. So you know,
to those sides. That Vincent's team was, just for the record, that Vincent's team was Dermot Connolly, Ger Brennan, Tomas Quinn, like a ridiculous level of talent among that side.
And end of Arley.
End of Arley from Mayo was there as well. You've got the likes of Nathan Mullins there.
Egan from Sligo.
Brendan Egan from Sligo, yeah. And that was another thing. Eamon Fennell was in that team as well, former Dublin midfielder, like Michael Savage in goal, Dublin goalkeeper. It was a ridiculously strong side.
Tall guy, a brute of a guy in midfield, kind of, he looked like a Viking as well. I can't remember his name.
Nathan Mullins, maybe, was it?
Nathan Mullins, yeah.
Nathan Mullins, man. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's really, really good, and a real veteran of the game as well. Like, he kicked 2 points there at crucial stages. Vincent's got promoted back to Senior A Championship in Dublin. They got relegated last year, but they got back up this year. It was they're in a similar position where they're transitioning now. They got a good crop of young lads coming through, and you know, they've obviously made the breakthrough into the senior side in the Senior B. Obviously, then not only were Rhode coming good, but Offaly were coming good at the time. All those young lads coming through, and then you made the Leinster final in 2006, and this game was one that I was at as a 5-year-old lad. I was there with my dad, but I even remember knowing like how big an occasion this was. I mean, 82,000 people in Croke Park to watch a Leinster final. I mean, the Leinster Championship has changed unbelievably now. Like, in my opinion, it's something that families go to now, but back then there was a real indication that Dublin lose Leinster games at the time. I mean, you think about it, Westmeath won it in 2004, Laois won it in 2003. I mean, you had Kildare, Meath, Offaly, all these teams were challenging Dublin on a regular basis.
And it was a glamour.
Was class.
It was a glamour event in terms of, like, not in terms of the occasion, the glory, the chance of winning a provincial championship. It had so now that that goal is like amazing for other counties, including Meath. But it's almost wiped out for Dublin. Like it's just the kind of tick the box sort of exercise, and Dublin are almost trying to strategize how do they train, what's their training schedule for going after the Sam Maguire, like where like at what stage are we peaking? Like are we going in third gear for Leinster final? Are we going to be training hard because we've bigger challenges ahead? Like that has to be that has to be in their psyche when they're organizing themselves for the year. So but I can't see it changing much. Like who's coming? Like Kildare promised a big challenge this year. We were all expecting something big after what happened in Newbridge. And then you actually peel all that back and you look at what was going on. Dublin were obviously not sharp at the time, and the game was in Newbridge, and they were missing a whole host of guys. And then they go to Croke Park and they just bury 4 goals. And then I heard people saying, if you take the goals away, it's a close game. I was like, but the goals are there.
You can do that in any game.
You could say that with anything, like, So the goals had to be scored, and they were, and the game was over after 15, 20 minutes, like realistically, like, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, what would I realistically say about that? I mean, look, Dublin, the challenge is definitely not what it was, but back then, I mean, the Leinster final was, like, as you said, a massive glamour event. And let's be real, I don't know how Stephen Cluxton avoided a red card for that challenge on Cathal Daly. I know that
it was a red card, yeah.
That was a red card. I've never seen a more stonewall red card. He took him out.
And that was actually, if you can recall back, that was at a pivotal point of the game. I think
that was just before half time, and the game was pretty much level.
Yeah, so
I couldn't believe he got away with that. And then that could have changed the game completely, because that Dublin team were a real all the way this way or all the way this way. Everything was going good, or everything was going bad.
I'd be wondering what the hell Cathal Daly was doing up there. Like the man was in like the latter parts of his year, and he was corner back. And next thing he was up against Cluxton. Like he was saying to himself, fair play to him for getting up the field that far at his age. Like,
oh, proper. And then as well, I want to touch on obviously what you got into post-career. So obviously you work with mock media and stuff to the video production. Like, how did that come around? Did you know that you wanted to do that, or did that come around through the army?
That came around through the army. Yeah, as I said to you, I got transferred to public relations branch, and when I told my cruciate 3 times actually. The last time being against Mullinocta in Tullamore in 2018 in the Leinster quarter final. But after I tore it the second time, you're obviously you're left in this vacant space where you're very much a part of everything, and you feel like we were playing the league, and we'd lost the Leinster final in 2014, and I go back in early with Offaly because I was just bored at home. I was just like, I'm not drinking for the whole Christmas. I think the rest of the road lads, Brian Darby and Niall McNamee and a few others, they weren't going to come back until mid-January or near the end of January because they wanted a break. And I said I'd go back in early, so I ended up going back in one day. I just put my boots in my bag. I didn't think I was going to get a game because I was literally just back, and I think that it started someone new centre forward, and he got injured after 2 minutes, and they brought me on straight away. And I'd no training done with them or nothing, but so I was literally back in 2 weeks after losing the Leinster final, but played on the whole National League then, and I remember. I was down in Limerick at work, and Rhode were playing Dunshaughlin in a challenge game over in Rhode, and like the Offaly lads are excused playing. Well, they were obviously with Offaly, but I remember the manager texted me and said, because I was captain, do you want to come home and have a half an hour this evening? And I was like, right, okay. So I drove home, and he goes, I'll take you off half time. I was like, grand. So pretty uneventful game, it was a real wet evening. And then like the last play of the first half, we were attacking, and then they broke us down and they were counter-attacking then, and I ran after the guy, and as I was running I turned and tore my cruciate again then. So I remember playing all the games in the National League, and then the 2 weeks later after I tore my cruciate, we were in Tullamore, and I was sitting in the dressing room, and Niall McNamee come up to me, and this is how irrelevant it got. You feel like you're playing, you're involved, you're a part of the puzzle, and you're a valuable member of our team. And then Niall said to me that he was after, Niall always wears underpants playing matches. He doesn't wear boxers, but he was after forgetting them. So he said to me, would you go downtown and get me a pair of underpants? And I was like, all right, grand. So I remember the stark reality of being on the team, and then 2 weeks later, like 25 minutes before the throw-in, standing in a queue in Dunnes Stores, buying Niall McNamee a pair of underpants. So you go from that to that in a matter of seconds. And then it was after that then I realized I'm after giving like all my energy to football, and I probably cut short on my own personal development for a sport. So I start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, or how can I push my own personal development? So I'd always a decent standard of writing, and I enjoyed journalism. So I went and started a degree in Dublin Business School. And as I said, because I was doing that, then they transferred me over to public relations branch, and I was writing for their magazine. But the only vacancy they could keep me with was there as a videographer, and I'd never picked up a camera in my life. And it was something that I felt like you needed to be kind of like in your whole life.
Yeah.
But it's amazing with media, like podcasts, journalism, media content, videography. Like, you're all just kind of telling a story, and I know how you do it is differently in terms of putting a podcast together or writing an article or creating a video, but you're still breaking down a story in your head and you're putting the pieces together to a final product. And once I realized that, I was just like, this is actually a really cool way of telling a story. And like, I just became like obsessed with the whole thing, like, and how to make like the video content better. You're looking at, how do I get my sound better? How do I get my picture quality better? You start bringing in graphics and animation and drone content and all that sort of stuff. And then like, I said to myself one day, I think I might start my own company. So I started it like not knowing anything about business, or I had no business brain. I didn't know how to market anything. I was just, everything was just literally off the cuff. And then, a year passes and you find out better ways of doing things, and you invest in equipment and stuff like that. And you start landing a couple of clients, and then, it becomes almost kind of like you always were meant to be there. And then I finished my degree, and then I always wanted to do a master's, because I felt like it just kind of solidified where you were at in your development. And like the guys in my course, they all have their own different reasons to why they're doing their masters, and a lot of them, like I'm definitely the oldest in the course by a long shot. But like most of them are starting out on their journey, whereas kind of I have my own thing, but because I want to be really, really good at and do it to the best of my ability, I felt like I needed to take this move. So yeah, I've 3 years left to do in the army, in the role I'm at, and then I qualify for my pension. So look, the world's my oyster in terms of where I want to go. I love dealing with people. I love like figuring out problems for them. But probably the best thing I like about it is that you have someone who's really passionate about their thing, whether it be, let's just say they owned a furniture shop, or they have a gym, or they have someone who's like exceptional at baking cakes, and they learned all the recipes from their grandmother, and now they're after buying or renting a space in a town, and they have this beautiful shop, but they need to show it off to the world. Like all the time, it's not just now and again. Every small business that I work with are like so passionate about their business, because they've created it from nothing. And you're tasked with creating content to show that off in its best state. So that's the real joy in it for me. Like,
yeah, no doubt. So if you are listening, do make sure to check out Mock Media. I mean, the content they make is brilliant. All drone footage is the latest of the latest. Really, it's brilliant. Been a good chat, mate. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hey man, bye bye.
All right.